Ja, my broer kan nie wag. Net so kan ek ook nie wag om te hoor. There is an inspiration. Brother Naftal,
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Wow, where do I start? Let me just move this aside. I want to make sure that everybody sees me this evening. For no other particular reason, but because I think that the Lord has a message for all of us. Sorry for that. I bought a glass of water for me because I am a guy that talks a little bit too much. And you must forgive me. But I do believe that God means something tonight as I share my experiences and as well a vision, a number of visions that the Lord, or rather visitations that the Lord had with me some time ago. It's a difficult act to follow when you've got men of God in the house. I've never stood up in front of a crowd of men, gentlemen, or rather maybe for any good reason, to talk about the goodness of God. And I must explain to you the reason for this is because I have been one that has never found myself to be worthy to fill that space, to talk, I wouldn't say on behalf of God, but about God. Because I wouldn't want somebody to judge me if I were to fall into sin, to think, SJTO. I don't want to be judged, and therefore I'm very cautious. But what I'm about to tell you this evening is something, or rather a sequence of events that took place over a number of years. And I believe that to a certain extent, I've put this off to not share this, these encounters that I had, because I was so skeptical about how people would respond when I would tell the story. And so we're talking about way back. The last visitation that I had was in about 2001, if I'm not incorrect. So you're now probably thinking, so brother, you standing over there on the stage now telling us that your testimony has been in the making for about 15 years. And I'll be honest and I'll tell you, yes, that's how long I've been sitting on this information I'm about to share with you this evening. Primarily, I need to establish one thing. I have been in this community for a number of years. I grew up in front of a very big number of the gentlemen that are here this evening. I need to ask from you first of all, do you assess me to be a person that is sane? Is anybody here of the opinion that I have lost my mind, or for some other reason maybe you've got evidence or maybe information that I've been maybe a clinical case and that maybe the doctors are dealing with me and I'm on medication? Is anybody here present aware of such things of me? That I maybe might stand here and I might be deceiving people? Alright, let me then ask, who maybe knows me for maybe more than about 15 to 20 years? Who knows me here for that long? There's a few hands here and there. There's a few hands. So my assumption here is that, gentlemen, a witness is only as credible as his testimony. So if I was standing in court today, I'll be under oath and I'll be telling you my version of events as I understand it. And that's what I'm going to share with you. So help me God. In 1978, on the 21st of March, a young boy was born to Tate Naftal Sr. and Meme Jacobina. Papa was flying somewhere across in Johannesburg, probably between Cape Town and Johannesburg, and my mom was in the north in those days of migrant labor system. And traditionally, my name would be given to me by my father. My father was absent at that point because he was working on this mine, particularly here in Ranimut. And my mom gave me a name, and that name is Meke, for the Shwambo, the vernacular, meke, in the palm of hand, or rather, in the palm of God's hand is what mom named me, meke. Literally translated means make in the hand. So that's what she named me. Dad came a bit later, then he named me after himself. He was very selfish. So in any case, I came to Ranyamud with my mom in about 1980. We were one of the first black families that were located, that were allowed to reside here. And I grew up in 2nd Avenue. And I remember one day coming from school. And as I came off the bus stop was right across the street from the house in 2nd Avenue. And Tate Kaulinga, those that remember, used to live on the other side of our street. And as I came into the house, I saw there were many cars parked outside and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. So I went into the house and I saw there were a lot of people and there were people sort of crying and I wasn't sure what was going on. So my dad took me aside and he told me, son, this is about when I was in sub A. I think that's grade 1 today? Grade 1, yeah? And so he sits me down and he says, son, your great-grandfather just passed away. I knew him as my grandfather because my dad's father was an absent father. My dad's mother passed away giving birth to his sister. So there are only 2 children, which is very small for a Shwambo family. So he told me that my great-grandfather had died. And my heart sort of sank because he was my favorite old man on the farm. And I loved the farm because of him. And he taught me quite a considerable amount of time for that little age that I was at the time. So off they went and they packed up and I was in my room packing my clothes to then go to stay in, I think it was probably 8th Avenue at the time. There was a family there that used to look after me when my parents left town. And lo and behold, I stood in front of the mirror in my room and I looked at the mirror, 6-year-old boy, and I looked very intently at myself and I heard the voice of God. Now ask me today what the voice of God sounds like. It sounds like any human voice. In fact, I don't even think it was an audible sound. I think it was more mental that I received this voice. And the voice said, you're a very special boy. And I thought, yeah. And I waited for the sentence to continue, and it didn't continue. Now you can imagine a 6-year-old boy. And I'm thinking to myself, how would I know about the issues of God at that very early age? I didn't, but in my heart, I sensed where that voice had come from. Death seemed to have become a reality in my life very early on where, if some of you remember the Seymour Randall gentleman that used to live here, his daughter was with me in sub A in about 1980, I think it was 84, 85. And she had passed away as a result of, I think it was an asthmatic attack. And so me and a friend of mine, Bruno, we just buried his mother last weekend. And so we were taking turns on standing on this a tree that had been cut down and we were standing on it and hollering. We didn't know where Satan was because we knew that Satan had taken him, That's what we understood. And so we were hollering there, hoping that somehow maybe Janine would be resurrected. And that didn't happen, obviously. So there I stood and I heard the voice of God for the first time in my life. Son, rather he said, you're a very special boy. And in my mind I thought, meaning special is it, does God say this to all the children or is it just me particularly? And I never shared it with anybody. I don't even think I've shared it with my parents. This is probably the first Gary that I'm telling about this because I've always thought when these things happen to you, when you share them, people might be very skeptical about what you're saying to them. It's not every day, and I know for one that when people say, and they quote God to have said something, it's not always that it's of God. You need to have the spirit of discernment to be able to tell the difference. Life went on, and I'm going to jump a whole lot of stuff, evidence of God's hand over my life. I came back from high school and I came to Ranyamud. I had a dream of becoming an electronic engineer. That wouldn't be, the Bible talks about men can make plans and they devise all these things, but it's ultimately God that allows you to get certain things done and directs you in your life, okay? Your life is not in your hands, it's not in your control. You are in control of nothing else but the decisions that you make. Even the heart beating in your chest is not beating as a result of what you have done. It's simply a manifestation of God's love for you, that things are sound and proper with you. You're in control of your decisions, and ultimately comes consequences, either bad or good. And so, in any case, I was living in Ranyamud at that time. Things didn't turn out and span out as I wanted them to. but I believe that God was directing my life. And at that time, there wasn't much to be done in the town of Oranjemund, so I joined up with a few friends that were much older than myself. That's the nature of the beast in Oranjemund. Before OPS had a high school, there was a gap of children that were just not here, and varsity students. So you had this matriculant little guy and then older people in the community. And then I joined up with Nightcall at that time. You'd recall that, or rather to this very day, I believe that Nightcall still belongs to Tate Frans Doroma. Of you will remember that Frans Doroma used to be our assistant general manager here and went on to become, was he the CEO MD of Telecom? I think it was the MD then. That's what I'm talking about. And then Tate Otto Shikongo, who was engineering manager at the time here, he's gone on to become the Supremo CEO at De Beers Marine Namibia. And Tate John Akapandi, or rather Tate Njara, they were the owners of that business. So I started working for them. And one night I came from the club. I love music. For maybe there are some of you who here this evening who used to dance to my music. Are there any of those people here who remember those days? Lucky. There are probably a few more in the community, but they just won't put up their hands. But we had a good time and I enjoyed my music. Joe, give us up. Give us up. It was a DJ Simon. In any case, so I went home. Okay, let me cut to the chase. I went home, and this was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. Got home, took off my clothes, and I lay down in my bed. I can't remember if I said a prayer or not. I slept. And while I'm sleeping, I suddenly hear a very loud sound, as if something walking through the door into my room. And for the life of me, I tried to react and sit up and look at what was coming at me, because I could hear these heavy footsteps coming into my room. And what I'm talking about, people, please do not feel afraid. Listen to what I'm saying and understand, and I'll qualify this a bit later, in that you've got such an unfair advantage against the devil. You've got an unfair advantage in Jesus Christ against the devil. But I'll put this in perspective as I tell the story. And so this thing walked up to my bed, and now you're probably wondering, so why didn't you sit down? For some other reason, I felt paralyzed. I personally believed that I was awake, but for some other reason, I could not move my body. I could hear everything and sense everything around me, but I could not move my body. And there was a sensation of, almost like electricity. I'm an electrician, I'm qualified. So I've been shocked a couple of times in my experiences, and I'm sure that everybody who's worked with power and has been shocked, that sensation was going through my body. I think rather inspired more by fear. And this thing came and stood next to my bed, and I could hear it breathing, and I'm thinking, and I'm trying to cry out. Funny enough, and I'm thinking as well, probably the atheists, those people that don't believe in God, when the calamity comes upon you, and there's no way to run, I'm pretty sure we all want to say, Jesus, please help me. I'm pretty sure even the atheist wants to do that, because there's nobody else to run to at that given moment. And in my mind, I'm trying to call out Jesus, and I can't understand for the life of me why I feel paralyzed and I cannot move. You know that fight and flight sensation that they all talk about? I was ready to fight. Whatever this thing was, whether it would kill me or not, I wasn't bothered. I'm going to fight as a young boy. And I tried to open my eyes and I couldn't. Let me just get a show of hands here. Who's ever had an experience where you've dreamt and you've heard or you've sensed something above the norm? Anybody here? So we're relating. Am I relating to somebody? There's a few hands here and there. We're relating. It's very difficult to put that into perspective for a person who's never experienced that. At the given time, I didn't understand what it was. I'll later learn that it was a spiritual attack. Okay? And as soon as this thing had come, it was breathing and it was actually trying to jump onto the bed. It would land and the weight of it would actually make the bed contort. And funny enough, it wasn't heavy enough that it would actually make my body roll over towards it. But it then suddenly stopped and it just disappeared. And I, for a moment, woke up and I'm like, what is going on here? Didn't tell my parents anything about it. I was very taken aback by it because I just thought, okay, maybe I've been seeing funny movies and maybe it's affected my thinking. Funny enough, a couple of weeks later, exactly the same thing happened. Exactly the same thing happened. And this time it came to my bed and it would try to jump into my bed again. And this time around, I was able to conjure just enough energy to open my left eye. Okay, so this would be the wall. My bed would be next to this. My bed would be next to the wall, and I would tilt my head a little bit, and I would just open my eyes slightly. Now again, what I want to describe to you, don't be afraid and put off by it. Okay. What I saw there was something like a hybrid, like a mix of a paw, rather let me start off with a claw. It looked like a chicken claw, almost like an ostrich claw, that was crossed with almost like a lion, because I could see the hair and it looked yellow. I'm describing it because that's what I saw. Whatever else was behind that paw, I couldn't see. All I could see was right here next to my head. And again, as soon as I saw that, I feel paralyzed, I'm electrified with fear. A type of fear that I've never ever experienced in my life before. I've been in many situations where I maybe almost had a car accident and things like that, and I've seen things on the road in terms of carnage, but nothing has ever elevated my sense of fear to that place. So I woke up the next morning and I went to my dad and I told him, hey Dad, man, listen, man, something's up here. I don't know what's going on, but something's not right. So he asked me to explain what had happened. And so he asked me, son, do you pray when you go to sleep? And I said, yeah, God, you know I pray. I'm a Christian. And so he said, well, just continue to pray. Not long thereafter, I was at college here at the time. I was studying electrical trade theory. The company saw that I was even doing a bit better. I was a bit more blessed than the guys that were studying with me that were named apprentices. So the company awarded me a technical bursary to become an electrician. So off I left home and I came to reside right here in these flats across from the road right here. My flat used to be somewhere in the back here, just across the street from MTC, somewhere in the front here. So in I moved, and let me put it this way. From that time when I had these spiritual encounters, these spiritual, what I call spiritual attacks, I never again slept with my lights off. That's how seriously it affected me. I always slept with my lights on. Until many years later that I meet my wife and eventually, I learned to sleep with the lights off. But for some other reason, even now, my passive lights are always on. So if I wake up in the middle of the night, I can see what's happening in my room. Okay, so I moved into the single quarters, and I remember a time that there was a pastor that was visiting with the Volle Evangelie here in 11th Avenue. And he asked for a group of volunteers, and we were putting on a industrial play, theatre. It was held in the Zachariah Lawala, the old cinema gym. Basically, this play was about awakening people's minds to the realities of what we do in the physical. There's a spiritual aspect to it. Okay, I won't get into too much detail because of our time, but in any case, the pastor spoke to us and said clearly, please, continue to pray for yourselves, and continue to pray that God will keep you strong to continue this entire week. It was probably a theatre that was put on for 7 days. And so we participated in it. The play was called The Hell Hole. That's what it was called. And so far, I think by the second night, I had a visitation again in my room. And this time, I'm lying in my bed. By this time, I bought myself a nice double bed. I know that my windows are closed because I used to suffer from sinuses. And my front door is closed, and I know that my door towards the kitchen, going towards the toilet, is closed. But for the life of me, there's a raging wind blowing through my room. And I would feel my blankets flapping and moving. And and it's a funny experience in terms of when you are having a spiritual attack. You feel the sensations of you are awake. You are convinced that you are awake. You hear everything around you. I could hear people's voices in my room and I could not understand. What is this? And again, you're trying to fight, and I used to feel this heavy thing again. Maybe this, I would probably call it a demon or something. The same thing was here on my bed, scratching and making funny motions. Please, listen to what I'm saying. Don't be scared off. I will teach you about the aspect of how unfair an advantage we've got in Jesus Christ. And again, as soon as it would have started, it would disappear again, and I'd stand up and I'd be all baffled and confused. And walk up and down a raven pant, and oh man, what is this? And I talked to some pastors and I asked them that they couldn't help me. They'd never been in a situation like that. They had no experience like that. So the household went on and things came to an end, and life continued just to normal. And then came the year 2001, which is the year, and it started with a bang and it sort of ended with a bang for me. And this is a significant part of my life. It changed the way I see things, and it changed the way I believe and interact with people. That particular year, I had the pleasure of being the main DJ at the year-end function, rather the year beginning function, if you call it that, at night call. So I was there doing the, what do you call it, the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, yeah, Happy New Year. So that was my responsibility behind the microphone. So microphones are very, I'm accustomed to them, I'm not scared of them, I've been doing it for a while. And immediately when I said, Happy New Year, there's a crowd of people in this club, night call, for you who've been there. It's packed, everybody's out, some of the doors are open, it's happening. And again, I hear this audible voice. And this voice says to me, this is going to be a different year in your life. No, it didn't, no, let me just clarify that. It said, this is going to be a different year. And so for a moment I looked around, and it was evident to me, because there's a lot of music playing, that the DJs that were with me in the DJ box didn't hear this voice. And the people that were in the crowd didn't hear this voice. But the effect of this voice on me was so strong, I just broke down and I started crying. Now, as a young man trying to discover yourself, the last thing that you want to do in front of your friends is shed tears and show signs of weakness. He was this was a bull, this was a man. Yeah. But that voice, and again I say it must have been the voice of God, because of the experiences that I've had thereafter. And in my mind I asked myself, does it mean it's a different year in my life? Or does it mean it's a different year for the world? We had just come through the year 2000, the millennium, and we were talking about maybe the world is going to end and all that sort of stuff. Nothing happened, and I was crying, and the guys were asking, are you okay? What's wrong? I said, no, I'm not feeling well. So I had to put on, I couldn't tell them I heard the voice. They would have probably thought, Esteban, is you alright in your corpo? Yeah, so in any case, I went off and I went to the France and the author, and I said, gentlemen, we're supposed to sunrise today, but I can't, I'm going to go home. He said, but no, this is the time that our customers are here, we need to entertain people. And I looked at him very sternly, and I never looked at an adult in that way. It's almost as if I was telling him, but the Frans, don't worry, whatever you say, I'm not going to listen. I know what I know, but I'm going to go now. So off I went, and the guys continued. Later that year, something significant happened to me. And for those that know Davras plant, I was an appy when they commissioned that plant. That's how long I've been with Namdeb. So we commissioned that plant. I was an appy electrician. And so I came home one afternoon, and I came and sat down outside my flat. At the time, I used to smoke. Yeah, I used to smoke. Not a chain smoker, but I used to probably puff 1 or 2 or 3 cigarettes a day. Ask me why, I always said, I get stressed. Okay, so I was sitting outside my flat and I was smoking. And for those of you that know me, I die, no, that's wrong. I love my jazz music, so I was sitting there listening to my music. And suddenly, this is the only way I can explain it. It was almost as if I felt somehow lifted. I don't know how to explain that. It's almost as if the Spirit of God came over me, and I felt, whoa, okay, what is this? I've never experienced this before. I'm saying so in hindsight now, understanding what had taken place that evening. So off I went into my room. It was probably about 8 o'clock the evening. Got inside, I told my next door neighbor, my best friend at the time, and I told him, listen, Tangeni, I feel weird. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel lifted. I feel very liberated. It's not got nothing to do with a cigarette. It's just, I feel lifted. And I told him, look, if tomorrow morning I don't feel well, please tell the training officers that I'm not coming into work today. So he said, all right, go to sleep. I'll definitely inform them if you don't wake up. Okay, cool. So I go to sleep. That evening, you must not remember that my room, the light never goes off. I told you I talk too much. But in any case, my room's light never goes off. Now I had acquired a fish tank where there was a bit of a light in there, so it illuminated the entire room, sort of thing. So at about, I estimate it must have been at least at about 2 o'clock that evening, that morning rather. I was suddenly, I wouldn't say suddenly, but suddenly I woke up. I woke up and I looked around and I thought to myself, okay, Naftal, why are you awake? I mean, you're supposed to be sleeping. But for some other reason, I wasn't feeling tired. I felt very refreshed. I felt very calm. And I looked around and I looked at my television set and I looked at my fish tank. I looked at my stuff that was around the room, pictures of the wall. And to convince myself that I was awake, I started wriggling on my bed. And I know what sound my bed makes. I know exactly what sound my bed makes. And that's the sound that my bed made. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, so I thought, okay, well, I'm awake. For what good reason, I don't know. In the next moment, the walls of my entire room disappeared. Look at me carefully. I'm telling you this story. This is the first time I've ever shared this with a crowd of gentlemen. I've probably told maybe in my lifetime, since when it happened, maybe 2 pastors that were very close to me. Tate Shivolo is now deceased. I'm talking about the pastor from Washitai congregation, and the late Titus Ngula was very close to me, so I shared these things with him. And maybe my parents and maybe a very close few friends, but nobody else has been, I never let this into anybody else. So my room disappeared. So I thought, okay. And I kept on looking. I looked at the night sky. The sky was clear, and I looked at the stars. The amazing thing is this. I used to wear glasses. And for you who know me for many years, I used to wear these very thick glasses. Some kids were very evil. They even used to call me Future. And I'm like, Future? Ja, maar jy is dom brille so dat jy kan in die toekoms sien. Het die ons vir my gesê. Yeah, your glasses are so thick you can see into the future. So you can remember those glasses. That's what used to happen. Children are evil. For some other reason, without my glasses on, lying on this bed, I can see clearly. And I'm looking at the sky and I'm looking at the stars and I'm thinking, wow. If it wasn't for the spirit that possessed me at the time, I would have probably jumped up and run. But I felt very subdued and very comfortable. So I thought, wow. And for the first time in my life, I see dark clouds coming from every wind direction. So I'm lying in my bed, facing west. That is west, right? Yeah, that's west, that's east. And I'm looking up and suddenly there are dark clouds coming from every wind direction. Some coming out of the west, some coming out of the east. I can see them overhead because I'm lying down. Some are coming out of the north, some are coming out of the south. And I've never seen clouds in my entire lifetime at the same altitude, at the same height, that are moving in different directions. I found it very weird. And these clouds came together. I would probably estimate from where I was lying, I would estimate probably in the direction of the hospital there. But it couldn't have been too far because I could see so well. I would estimate probably over the old bakery somewhere there. That's where more or less these clouds came together. So it was dark. And suddenly, as these clouds had covered the sky, I saw a great light. Now I need to qualify this and help you understand what it is that I saw. This light, if you've ever seen, there's a lot of guys here, rather gentlemen here, who do technical work. Arc welder, you must advise, you mustn't look into the light because it hurts your eyes. So I'm looking at this light and I'm telling you, if you've been to Johannesburg in times of when there's, what do you call it? Lightning strikes, thunderstorms. Those massive bolts and you hear that, it humbles you. It was something like that, but it was a consistent light that was shining very powerfully, very, very powerfully. I just can't describe because I've never seen anything like that before. And this light is shining very powerfully, but there was a tangible power to it, very light. And to this very day, I can't understand why I wasn't blinded by this light. And as I look towards this light, I see a cloud descending from where these other black clouds came together, and this white cloud made of light started descending. And I thought, oh, this is odd, man. What is going on here? And I looked and I saw on this cloud is made of light. It's in this powerful light. This cloud is made of light. And on this cloud as it descends, I see there's a person standing on the cloud. And I look And this person is dressed and cloaked in light. So it's almost like a garment, almost like my blazer, but it was almost like hanging down. So I could see the garment of light. This person was standing on a cloud of light. This cloud of light was in this beam of light. The person himself, where the hands would be, where the hands and the feet would be, and the head, were made of this tremendous light. I couldn't see that. I could just see light. Now, for me, when I recite this now, it's significant, the contrast between these lights, these different lights, and yet there's so much power, and I just can't explain it any better than that. And I looked there, and the next thing that strikes me, which is the weirdest thing ever, happens. I recognize this person that is standing on this cloud. And then asked me, Nafto, what is the definition of recognition? Now, I haven't studied this up to be able to explain this to you, but it's what struck me. For me to recognize you, we must have had a history before. If I recognize that the Kalengo is worship or any other one of my brothers here, it's because we've got an association over time. It struck me that there must have been an association between me and this Jesus Christ. That's what it came across to me. I recognize him as the Son of God. So it told me something about the relationship that we've got. Maybe before we were placed in our mother's wombs and we came into this world, we came out of a place called love in the Father's heart. So there was, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm hoping that maybe I'm striking a nerve with some of you here. But there was a recognition. And as I recognized Jesus Christ on that cloud, I suddenly started feeling this pain within my body. And I couldn't quite I can't exactly explain what the pain was, but it was across my entire body as I was lying there on the bed. And it's almost as if I felt pulled out of my body. This is just a weird way to put it, but I felt as if my body, rather my spirit, left my body. And as I was moving towards this cloud, I was tempted to look back, and I looked back and I saw my body lying there on the bed, and I thought, oh my goodness, is this how I die? And for a moment there I thought, my poor mother and father. So tomorrow morning when the people come and I haven't gone to work and they come and break down my door, maybe gain access to my flat, they will find me there dead. But how do I reassure, this was my concern, how do I reassure my mother and father that they shouldn't worry? Christ himself had come to fetch me. And he sensed that within me. And as I looked there, and as my body disappeared into the darkness of the world, not to say that I was elevated to the point where I could see the glow, no. It just disappeared off into darkness. I said in Afrikaans, and I don't know why for the life of me, maybe it was because I was attending an Afrikaans church at that point in time. And I came to Af en ek sê, Here, nee, ek sê, mense, ons het net 'n grap gemaak van die besigheid, maar die Here lewe. Jesus is real. And in the next moment, I see myself, I don't know how this happens. Maybe if you've had spiritual encounters, maybe you'll be able to reason with me and agree to disagree. Suddenly I found myself in a place, it seemed as if I was hovering in thin air, looking through the walls of a hotel, looking into a particular room. Why that particular room, I don't know, but this was what was shown to me. And I see this guy there, and I don't know how I know this, but I just knew this. This guy was married, and he was there with a woman, and this woman was also married, but they weren't each other's spouses. They were actually cheating on their spouses. And suddenly, the light that I'd seen penetrated into this room, this hotel room. And suddenly the spirit of conviction comes upon these people, and in the act of lovemaking, I'm being very explicit, there's no juniors here. And in this act of lovemaking, the spirit of conviction reaches them, and let me say it was maybe Salma and Zachariah. They start to suddenly, Zachariah, wat maak ons? Suddenly they start asking themselves a question through the spirit of conviction that had reached them, and they look towards, and they realize that they've been doing wrong. They've been found not in right standing when Christ came. And they looked out and they saw the light and they saw Christ like I had seen him, and they both bowed their heads and they just started shaking their heads, realizing they were not found in right standing. Another one that he showed me was There was a guy who broke into a house and everything. He was escaping. I could understand his thoughts. And this is the weird thing. I could understand his thoughts. It's almost as if God allowed me to get into his mind to understand what he was thinking. And he's running away, making his way with his stolen television down the street. And as he's running, I could see that this guy was not even going to be caught by the police or even convicted for this crime. He was scot-free. And suddenly the spirit of conviction reaches him and he stops dead in his tracks. He's running right there and he thinks to himself, hey, what maak ek jou? If it was me, oh, nafta, what maak ek? And suddenly that spirit comes over him and, oh, nee man. And he sees the light and he drops his head and he starts shaking his head because he understands that he was found in not right standing with Christ Jesus. Another one was a typical mesteker. I don't know why these crimes, but in any case, I was a mesteker, a guy that kills people. And I knew that I understood this guy's record. From where, I don't know. These faces are not familiar to me. And he's about to stab somebody. And in that moment again, that spirit of conviction finds him and he starts to interrogate himself. You know the truth. You can't lie to yourself. You can try, but ultimately you know the truth about yourself. Even if we don't know what you've been doing, you know the truth. And God too knows the truth. You can't hide from him. Okay? And so, after seeing that vision, I suddenly found myself, my eyes just closed and I suddenly started feeling, who's ever gone to sleep and felt that sensation like they fell? Who's ever felt that? Who's ever felt that? Come on, be honest guys. You're lying on your bed and you just suddenly feel like, and you feel like you're falling. Who's ever felt that? Okay, so I'm not the only weirdo here. Okay. And ever since the full leg, I start falling, but at a tremendous speed. I don't know where I was, but I felt like I was traveling very fast and I thought, oh, when I reach the ground, it's going to be a splat. And I'm going to die. And for some of the reason, when I eventually did land, after what seemed to be an extended time, I landed softly on my bed. My eyes were closed. I didn't know how I was there, but I was there. And to convince myself again that I was awake and conscious, I started rolling on my bed. And my bed made that funny squeaking sound that I know only my bed can make. And I went to sleep. That night I slept like a baby. I slept like a baby. I've never slept like that in my entire life since. I woke up the next morning and started looking at my fingers and body. It was almost as if the detachment had made me realize something about the physical and the spiritual. It felt like I was animated, like as a cartoon sort of thing. That's a bit weird to talk about, but it felt weird. And I went to work and Ginny Boy, Blakey's Bazi, you see, he's only from Andy. But in any case, he was my foreman at the time. And I came to the workshop at Projects Day and I was explaining to him, Ginny Boy, and I was telling everybody in the workshop, guys, this happened to me. I experienced this, that. And everybody was looking at me and thinking, okay, did you drink something? I said, no, I didn't drink anything. And I looked outside the window waiting for these signs and waiting for something to happen because I had a visitation last night. Nothing happened. For 3 days after that vision, I did not eat. I was satisfied. I don't know what occupied my body, but I did not eat for 3 days. Why 3 days? I don't know. A little bit later the year, I came back to my flat and I was sleeping. And I was suddenly, as I was sleeping, I was suddenly picked up by the Spirit and I was in the Spirit and I'm like, what's going on? I couldn't see the Lord. I sensed His being around me, probably hovering maybe somewhere above me. And I'm looking into my flat unit. For some other reason, the walls had disappeared. And I'm seeing my body lying there on the bed. And I'm thinking, what is this now? And somehow the Spirit of God ushers me to look closely. And I look at myself. And almost where that letter E would be. I'll be looking at myself lying there and I'm thinking, okay. And he instructs me to look a bit closer. And I look at my body closely and suddenly I see a silhouette. The outline of something gigantic standing next to my bed. Standing next to my bed. And I look closely and I see the silhouette. If I had to estimate this being that was standing next to my bed, would it at least have been something like 10 to 15 meters high in height? And this thing was butch, this thing was big, it was covered in darkness. And the closer I looked, suddenly I could hear flies. I could hear flies circling this thing, around this thing. And I thought to myself, wow, what is this? And God allows me to experience another revelation. And suddenly I smell a detestable smell about this being that smells like rotting meat. If you've ever had meat in the fridge, and the fridge is maybe thawed out and you've gone on holiday and maybe the fridge is not working, you come back. Typically, what does rotten meat smells like? That putrefied rot is what it smelled like. So I could smell it, I could see it, I could even hear it breathing. These very deep breaths that it was breathing. Again, don't be afraid. I'll explain to you that you've got an unfair advantage in Jesus. And so, the Lord allows me to see another revelation. I start to sense this being's hate for me. And I'm thinking, but what can I have possibly done to this great beast of a thing for it to hate me so much? And God's voice speaks into me and it says, son, that being doesn't hate you for you. It hates you because of who resides in you. And I realized what the Lord was showing me. I've never done the study of demons. I don't know what this thing was, whether it was Satan himself incarnate or whether it was a demon. I don't know. All I know is that this thing hated me. Again, hideous. The issue of flies was around this thing. It was dark. It was putrefying. The smell. I could sense the hatred. I've never sensed hatred so much. But this thing hated me. Then again, I was back in my body and I was sleeping. The last vision that took place, that I'm going to go into now, was the last one that I had. Ever since that time, 2001, we're in 2016, that was about 15 years ago. And what happened this particular evening, and I want you to listen intently. I was in the club. I love my music. I was DJing and I was enjoying it thoroughly. We enjoyed our music, yeah. We enjoyed our music, and it was nice. So that particular evening, I believe that I played my best gig ever, mixing and scratching and working on the boards of production. That's the sort of stuff that I used to do. We made good money for the owners of the business, and I enjoyed music. But in my innermost being, I always knew this wasn't the place that I was supposed to be at. It's amazing how a Christian just knows, die goed wat ek doen, is nie reg. The spirit of conviction. You've got the spirit of discernment in you. Alright, so I was playing let me start over. That particular day, I was working at 2 plant at the time. I came off the mine. It was a payday. I can't remember what month it was, but it was probably middle of the year somewhere. Came and withdrew some money at the bot machine, walked off, and I came this way. You guys would remember when Mesandra grinds her meat. What the people used to do in those days, before PEP was built, there used to be an open parking area there, and that's where the people used to grind their meat. So I walked over there, got myself some roasted brood and some meat, and I was eating, and lo and behold, who pops up? One of the ladies who's organizing this particular event, Bonita Witboy, and she was sitting in a white sedan at the time, and she sat there in the car and she called me, Naftal. And I said, yeah, call me over, I want to talk to you. I went over reluctantly, so I spoke to her, so I was like, no, okay. And she looked at me with this very deep look, and she told me, Naftal, I want to talk to you. I need to talk to you about something. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to talk to me about? No, you've got to make time and come to see me so I can talk to you. So I was like, oh, okay, right, fine. So off she went, and I continued to eat my meat, and I went to sleep the late afternoon, woke up in the early evening, went off to night call, where I was now going to rock the house, so to speak. So yeah, off I went to night call. That evening, I believe I had one of the best gigs of my life. Brilliant music, I mixed well through, and I know that all my customers were enjoying the old school grooves and everything. It was just marvelous. So I play a little jazz song as I'm walking off, I switch off the system and I go towards the bar and I sit there. And the bar, nightcore hasn't changed much from those days. So I sat there, my brother. So I sat there. and was watching TV, waiting for the rest of the staff to finish off so we could close the business and they would depart from the building. Now, there was a lady who was sitting not too far away from me, and this lady had a daughter who I went to school with. I can't remember her name right now, but I don't even want to go into names because I'm about to reveal something to you. So I see this lady and I go to her and I greet her, maybe so-and-so, and we embrace and we start talking. I ask her, now, where is that beautiful daughter of yours that went to school with me? No, she's in Windhoek, she's doing well, and all these sort of things. And so I said, yeah, I understand this is your last day here in Arrangement. Are you having a sort of a send-away party here at night? Well, yeah, I'm here with my friends and tomorrow I'm leaving, never to see this town again. So this person that lived here, left Arrangement, came back after maybe 15 or 20 years, just one little stint, and then she went back. She was now on the way back to Windhoek. So I said goodbye and I sat there by the counter, and I wasn't drinking, I was just watching the TV, and out of the corner of my eye, I catch this gentleman who's sitting down the corner of the bar. For you've been in Ninecore, the one closest to the snooker table, and the snooker table is still where it was from 1996, it's still been there. So I look at I see this guy is looking at me, and I think, okay, is this guy now looking at me? Is he with this woman? Does he think maybe I'm making a move on this woman? And I felt very uncomfortable because the guy kept staring at me. And when I made eye contact, he would just keep staring at me. So I thought, okay, miskien is hy jaloers of iets, ek weet nie. In any case, I continued looking, and this guy stood up and he started walking towards me from around the counter. And so I braved and I built my fist just in case there would be some altercation. So I thought, okay, I've done nothing wrong, but here this guy is coming and he walks past me from behind. I'm watching the mirrors as he's walking past. He walks past and he goes to the other counter, round about where the jukebox, not jukebox, where the gambling machines would be. I think they're still in that area. And he stood there and he just continued to stare at me. And I thought, man, why is the guy looking at me like that? And he then calls me. He says, Mr. DJ. Everybody used to know me as MC Cool J. In any case, the guy calls me, Mr. DJ. I said to him, yeah, what's up? He said, listen man, I need to talk to you. So I stand up and I'm thinking, okay, is the guy now trying to beat me on the other side of the counter? So I went there, kept the distance between me and myself, and he then says, no, don't stand that far. Please come a bit closer to me. This is a total stranger. I don't know this guy. So he says, Nafta? No, he didn't call me Nafta. He just said, Mr. DJ. And he was just very blunt about it. He just said, listen, brother, if you plan to sleep with that woman, I need to caution you because I have a friend who's now deceased, who I know was positive, HIV positive, and I know that he dated this woman. And I was totally blown out of the water. I looked at this guy and I thought, no, my brother, those were not my intentions at all, you know. We do fall to sin. I mean, let's attest to it. We fall to sin. Or are there some of you who are sitting here holier than thou? I don't think so. But in any case, the guy told me this, and I said, that wasn't my intention at all. Had it been, you could have potentially saved my life tonight, but that wasn't my intention. Oh, okay. So I went back with this remorseful feeling, and I went to this woman, and I looked into her eyes, and I said, listen, Madam So-and-so, you go well, and God bless you. And off I went out of Ninecore, and I walked down the stairs, and as I was leaving the building, there was a gentleman who is now deceased, who was killed. Of you that remember Bruce, that was stabbed in Ninecore, he was standing outside and they were fighting with another guy. And he was throwing bottles and this and that. So I had to duck and dive and get out of there. But I was feeling so depressed at that moment. And I started walking across the street here. As I was saying, PEP wasn't built in those days. My flat was right about at the corner in the second row from the front here. It was the second room. And I'm walking here between what do you call it? These little plants in the middle of the street there. And as I'm walking, I'm conversing with God. And I'm saying, Here Father, hoekom is die wêreld so deurmekaar? Now we've got these diseases, and mense het bekleed, daar more vermoor die mense themselves, and people are killing each other. Oh man, I was feeling very depressed at that particular moment. And now I walked, and I got into my room, and I took off my clothes, and I hung them up. Of you that have been in nightclubs, people are smoking, your clothes smell of smoke. So obviously the next morning I'll have to do the washing. So I hung them up, and from a previous experience where I had a spiritual attack, the very last spiritual attack that I had, and I didn't tell you about this because of this now, and I'm going to fill this in now. There was one time where, now these things were moving and I felt this wind blowing through my room and I was sort of distorted and I didn't understand what was going on. And for some reason, the Holy Spirit ushers into me to say, Daftar, visualize the crucifix. Visualize the crucifix. And as soon as I visualized the crucifix, remember in the past, I'm always trying to mutter, open my mouth and speak and say, Jesus, help me. And I couldn't because my mouth felt sealed. I felt paralyzed. And as soon as I visualized the crucifix, net so vinnig soos daai goed gekom het by my net. Daai goed was weg. Net so. And I stood up in victory and I started yelling and I'm like celebrating. You failed. Now I know what you seek. Now I know what your weakness is. You know. So the crucifix is basically a symbolism of the crucified Christ, victory in Christ. So now I'm there, take off my clothes, and I'm kneeling down by my side of my bed. If you want to find God, you'll find Him on your knees. That's something else that I need to reveal to you. If you want to find God, you'll find Him on your knees. Not on a high horse somewhere where you feel but when you're broken and you're down on your knees, that's when you'll find God. He loves a heart of humility. He just does. And so I kneel down. Remember, I'm not taking drugs. I'm not drinking. I'm sober. I'm conscious of the situation. I kneel down and I start to pray. Now, again, I want to visualize the crucifix out of my own because of that, how can I say, that victory that God had given to me. And as I try to visualize the crucifix, for the life of me, I don't know why I couldn't visualize it. And the Holy Spirit ushers to me, son, you've sinned through the course of this day. Pray and ask for forgiveness. And I said, Heavenly Father, please forgive my sins. And as soon as I had said that, before I even continue to the story, when it is that you pray to God and you ask for forgiveness, regardless of what you've done, my brother, I almost said my sisters, they're not my sisters here. But regardless of what you've done, God is true to His word. He forgives. Oftentimes we don't forgive ourselves. We stay in that place of, we feel, what is the word? Condemned, and we wallow in that sense. Oh, Here, sê nie vir my vergewe. Or tot ek manager mekaar please. Why do I feel like this? But often it's because of our unbelief, but God immediately forgives you when you ask for the remission of sins. So there I'm kneeling next to my bed. This is the amazing thing. I'm awake this time. This time I'm not even sleeping. Kneeling down. Please forgive me my sins. And immediately my eyes are opened. The very bed that I was kneeling down next to, leaning my arms on, had gone. Oh, so I look around. The walls have disappeared of my room, and it seems to be so orchestrated. I'm only seeing what I'm being shown to see. So I'm looking, and I see a pole planted in the ground before me, just as that thing would be there. All I can see is this pole planted in the ground. And I'm thinking, after, so I rub my eyes and I look, and I see a pole planted in the ground. Now a third time, I rub my eyes, and I look clearly. Again, remember, I used to wear glasses. So this is the amazing thing. I can see clearly without the help of glasses. Now I'm looking. And I start looking up this pole. And suddenly I see feet. Now ask me what color feet they were. Were they of a black man, or were they of a white man, or a colored man? It didn't seem to be any of any significance. I just saw feet. And as I continue looking up, I start to see, but again, in this area, I can't tell you whether there was something covering it. It was just not shown to, it didn't seem to be of essence. And as I got to this area, I started looking towards the waist. Now, the indication I was looking for was, is this a male body or is it a female body? And I could make out it was a male body. And I rubbed my eyes again and I looked, and again it was orchestrated, and I look up and I see the outstretched arms. I see the outstretched arms nailed against the cross. Even before I looked at the face, again my spirit recognized this man on the cross as Jesus Christ, the Son of God. The Son of God. And I didn't look at his face. It was, as I'm saying, it was almost as if it was orchestrated. I looked above the face and I looked it towards the head, and I saw the crown of thorns. Now, there's also a revelation about this crown of thorns. And it's amazing how God talks in pictures to us. I could see that whoever put this crown of thorns on this Savior's head really, really hated him. These were long thorns, and I could see where the thorn would pierce into the flesh, between the skull and the flesh. And I could see the ripple part of where the thorn would be and where it would protrude. To such an extent that it was a gory scene for me. I just like, oh, and I looked away. But again, the Holy Spirit seems to usher me to look towards the crucified Christ. And I look at his head and I think, wow. And I see the blood flowing, and I rub my eyes again and I look and I see the blood flowing. And then, as if orchestrated, I look into his eyes. Now, I pause for a moment because I try often in my own mind to explain what it is that I saw in those eyes. And it often brings me to tears when I talk about it, because words fail to express what I saw there. I saw perfection. I saw love. I saw contentment. I saw passion. I felt in that very moment. In actual fact, when I looked at him the first time, it was almost as if the wind was blown out of me, and I fell to my knees as if I couldn't stand in his presence. I fell down and lay there for a while, as if something had blown the air out of my stomach, out of my lungs. And for some other reason, the Holy Spirit ushers me and encourages me to stand up. And I stand up and I look into the eyes of Jesus. In that moment, I knew in my head that I was created for this moment, in the sense that if I remained here for the rest of my life and just looked into this gentleman's eyes, that's all I needed to do. Everything was perfected. Everything was... words fail me. I just don't know how to describe this to you, gentlemen. I'm actually doing you a great injustice, because how do you see love? How do you see love? Possibly. Could anybody even stand up and try to tell me what love is and what love looks like? I think the closest picture that we've ever got of love is maybe a mother holding the little baby there, and motherly love, that's the closest that I can talk about in terms of how possibly we as human beings can see love. But I saw love in those eyes, man. I saw love in those eyes. And the next minute, the most amazing thing happens. He starts talking to me. Now, let me qualify this. He doesn't talk to me like I'm talking to you now with my mouth. He starts talking to me through his Holy Spirit. And again, if you ask me how that works, I don't know. I was just a witness to all of this. I just experienced it like just anybody else. And he says to me, "Nafta, my son." And I'm like, he knows my name. Nafta, my son. The world is such a place. And I'm thinking, now I'm trying to do my arithmetics in my mind. I'm jogging through everything. What do you mean the world is such a place? And it takes me back to when I was walking from the club, coming to the room, just about 10 minutes prior to that, where I was walking, asking the Lord, hoekom is die wêreld so teer mekaar? Hoekom vermoor die mense mekaar? Why is the world the way that it is? And so I understand perfectly what he's trying to say to me. The world is such a place. In actual fact, it will not change until the book, the Holy Bible, the prophecies that have been said will come true. Once there's a time that is appointed for this world to be in this chaos, but it will come to an end. But at a given time, not immediately, not now, a bit later. Things must still take place for this world to be changed. And then he goes on to say, Nafta, you need to count yourself as a very blessed person. So now I'm thinking, blessed person, now what are you talking, I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about me? And suddenly it's almost as if I see myself, how can I say, opened up in terms of he's able to see the innermost things about my heart. and he's looking at me, and I realized that he's talking to me. Let me put it this way. I had a very serious crush once on a girl that we grew up together here, and we went through junior primary, secondary school, finished school, and I always projected that and she left and she went to the States, and she never came back to the country, and I felt very depressed, and I was always, man, no, come back to this, it's so maniera. And so he's showing me that you need to count yourself as a blessed one. You do not eat like some of your brothers in dustbins, and you do not sleep under bridges and so forth. You just need to see yourself as a blessed person. And he then goes on to show me things about myself, sins that I'd committed, things that I'd done, and almost as if like, again, elevated, his presence was with me, and I could see myself there doing whatever sin that he was showing me. And for the life of me, I don't know how, but I would end up back here again with him next to the cross, and I'd be looking at him, and for some other reason, I've got a hammer in my right hand, and I can't understand this. And I walk up to the cross, and I stand there, I look at him, and involuntarily, not of me, involuntarily, I start smacking the nail in his left hand deeper. And I would see the blood spatter, and I would see him contort his face, and with only a command that God himself can command, he commands himself back into, what would you call it? In a state of calmness. And he'd look at me with even more love than he'd looked at me before. And ek staan op daar met trane in my oë, en ek sê, maar Here Vader, it wasn't actually me, it was an involuntary action. I'm trying to explain this, and I can't. And it showed me something else, and I found myself back at the cross, nailing that nail deep into the cross. And I'm panicking because, Lord, it's not me. I don't know what's controlling my arm, but it's not me. And every time that I'd nail that nail deep into the hand of Jesus, and it would spatter the blood, he would look at me even with more love. And he ends up by saying, Naftal, you people will never realize how much I love you. If I had to die 1,000 deaths for your sake as human beings, I would do it. But you and me know that this one sacrifice was more than enough. I could have asked my Father in heaven to send a legion of angels to take me away from this place and put to death all those people that crucified me and put me here. But I did not do that. And he says, Nafta, this is my sacrifice for you. Oh, man, this is my sacrifice for you. And those words rang in my heart. And suddenly I see myself in the DJ box. I don't know why, the DJ box. And I'm playing music. The clubhouse is full, and there's music. There must be music playing because I can see the people dancing everywhere, but I can't hear the music. It's also as if I was disconnected from that reality. I'm there playing music, and the voice of God speaks to me, and he says, you love music, don't you? And I say, oh, yeah, I love this music, and God knows my passion for music. And he then says, look there. Not pointing a finger, I just heard his voice, and I knew exactly where to look. He says, look there, and I look towards the dance floor, and the people are grooving and moving, and I even go and I make a recommendation there on the microphone. You know those DJ terms, I don't even know how to mimic it now because I haven't DJed in such a long time. Like, hey, come on, let's get down. In any case, the people were grooving and moving about, and he points me to look there, and I look there, and he says, suddenly, you don't see it, do you? And I look, and I'm baffled, and I don't see anything out of the ordinary. And he says, son, Satan is using you to mislead my sheep. He didn't refer to them as people, my sheep. And I thought to myself, but if it wasn't the voice of the good shepherd himself referring to his people as sheep, then certainly, who can this man be but not Jesus Christ? This must be Christ Jesus. And suddenly it came to me. I'm a technical person. There's a lot of people that here as well that do engineering work and stuff like that. For a moment, I couldn't quite understand understand why he's saying now, Satan is using me. And the analogy came to me. Just as you've got a car or an engine, it is made of many different components. Even if it's just one little screw that is on that engine that is holding on a little cable or something. The engine is made up of a number of parts. So I saw myself as being used by Satan to make the groove nice, where people can drink, and sometimes people are losing their lives in this situation. And ons bly weg van die dinge van die Here because we're so busy, so hung over the next morning, not even to go to church and so forth. And again, I see myself beyond, right there at the cross. And he looks at me intently and he says, Nafta, this is my sacrifice for you. What is your sacrifice for me? And as it came, he disappeared. He just disappeared. And I found myself sitting in the corner on the opposite side of my bed, crying and so forth. And without making a long story short, I pray that God has revealed something to you through the vision that I've just shared with you. I've never done this. I believe that, I was actually wondering why it is that the ladies have organized the men's conference, and I just found it so funny, but to a certain extent, I feel in my heart that this is a divine commission. I'm here for a particular reason, and I don't know why God has asked me to be here this evening to give this testimony, but I believe that it will release me from my responsibilities to this community of Raymond.